Frankie Slow, and I'm filling in for the doc. And this is Theater 101, and it's about characters. And I don't know, I may be a character, but I don't know what a character is, because I'm Frankie Slow. But I'm going to try to do my best to explain to you what a character is. I hope you understand what I have to say. I'll be right back because I need my notes, but I have trouble reading, so please bear with me. As you can see from the opening of this video, that I started out with, you could tell them by their fruits. You can tell them by their fruit was a quote by Jesus. I also opened up with a character, because today we're going to be looking at characters. Now, why did I post, you could tell them by their fruit? Well, if you're watching a film or a TV show, and in the show somebody is killing someone, well, right away you know he's a criminal, a murderer. How did you know that? By what he did. So what he did is his fruit. So as you watch and read stories, the actions of the character, the actions of the person are the fruit. And that's why Jesus said you could tell them by their fruit. So he's saying, if you look at what they produce, if you look at what they do, that tells you who they are. So, for example, Bill Gates. He made Microsoft. So what do we know about Bill Gates? He's an inventor. He's a computer type of inventor. Jobs, another inventor. How do we know? He created Apple computers. Thomas Edison, another inventor. How do we know he's an inventor? Because his fruit was a light bulb. So you see, what a person produces is their fruit. What a person produces tells us what type of person they are. And that's how we know their character. Because the character is not only a person in a story, but a character is the behavior of that person in that story. What's his characteristics like? See? What's the character's characteristics like? So the characteristics tells us who the character is. So if we have a characteristic of being silly, stupid, stumbling, we may say that that character is an idiot. Why? Because his fruits demonstrate what the character is. So the characteristics describe the character. So this is another element in a story. Stories cannot move. Stories are not stories unless they have a character. If you're reading something that doesn't have characters, then more than likely you're reading an essay on a topic of something. You're reading a topic. You're not reading a story. You're reading maybe an essay on behavior. Maybe you're reading an essay on character, but you're not reading a character in a story. There's a difference between theme and topic. A topic is going to be something that you talk about and describe, just like I'm doing right now.
the theme could be characters, but in a story, characters are people, or like I mentioned before, even cars that talk, that are expressing something, that are showing something, that have a certain type of characteristics, they become the characters. So we have characters in a story. But now, how often have you asked yourself what kind of a character you are? Let's go back to the idea that if I wanted to write your biography, what would, number one, what would the theme of the story be? What would be the story itself? What would be reading and seeing about your life? And in doing that, what type of a character do we see? What kind of a character do we see? Now, I'm hoping that we don't see a loser. I'm hoping we don't see somebody who's lazy. I'm hoping we don't see somebody who is a thief, because those are characteristics, right? Stealing is a characteristic of a thief. Murder is a characteristic of a murderer. Lack of production, sitting around doing nothing, are the characteristics of a lazy person. So, you see, the fruit, you can tell them by their fruit. There's another cliche, too, that deals with fruit. And it says this: a fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, if I'm an apple tree, if I have an apple tree, and my apples start to fall off, well, they're going to land on the ground near my trunk. They're not going to be 2 miles away. So the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. That tells us something else about characters, also about setting. Remember, we spoke about setting. It tells us that more than likely, your characteristics, the type of fruit that you produce, is also kind of related to your family, your environment. Fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. So, what type of parents do you have? You know, how did they raise you? Because that how they raise you is how they're fertilizing the tree, how they're preparing for the fruit. You see? So characteristics belong to characters. And I'm asking you that question again. What type of a character are you? If I was to write your story, how would you describe yourself in your story? Have you ever considered identifying your own personal characteristics? Are you an aggressive person? Are you generous? Are you kind? Do you do kind? Now, see, watch. Do you do kind acts? Because if you do kind acts, that means you are a kind person. The fruit is doing kind acts. Do you give money to different organizations? Well, giving money is donating, is generosity. So that would mean that that means your fruit is generosity. But what does it mean about your character? Well, it means your character is generous. You see, the fruits tell what the tree is. So you're the tree. Your behavior is the fruit. So in a story, you see how I'm bouncing back and forth to you and the story, the elements of the story and real life. So in a story, the actions of the persons in the story let us know, the reader, the viewer of the film, who the character or is, what type of person the character is. We know how the character is based on how the character performs, because the performance is the fruit. So what do you do on a daily basis that's your fruit, that lets the world know what type of tree you are? What type of fruit is your behavior? What type of fruit do you produce that lets us know your character? What type of tree you are? Because the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Now, for homework, what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to think about what type of fruit do you produce on a daily basis? What type of behavior do you demonstrate on a daily basis? Because those two things are your fruit. What you produce and how you behave is your fruit. They go together. That makes up your tree. So your fruit tells us what type of character, what type of a person you are. So, and this again goes for theater. So your homework is to think about those things, your fruit, and what it tells us about your character. Until next time, God bless.